Hey guys and girls, Board now, back with Rachel McDonald. On this video, we will be talking about the first episode of the brand new Chucky TV show, which is airing on Sci-Fi and the USA Network in the States. Episode 1 is called Death by Misadventure, and I think if you're a fan of the Chucky series of films, this is highly anticipated because it has brought back the creators of those films, the writer, director who has been involved pretty much throughout those movies. It has also brought back the core cast, and we're not just talking about Brad Dourif as Chucky, we're talking about Jennifer Tilly, we're talking about Andy, who was the original kid in the original movie. And so all the main players really have been signed up for this TV show in the continuity from the movies. Be quite excited for it because when you see how serialized the later movies have become, like the last two in particular, and I heard they were continuing it on TV, I thought, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense because it had become more serialized anyway. Its first episode it does actually stand alone. If you've not been following the later movies, it does actually stand alone as a story, and you don't have to have seen those recent movies. Now, I'm guessing as we get further in, there is going to be stuff happening, and because really the only character in this from those movies is Chucky himself. At one point there's a phone call with someone who I'm assuming is meant to be Andy, who you hear the voice on the phone, but apart from that, it's sort of Chucky and these new set of characters. So the basic plot is then this character of Jake, this teenage boy, picks the Chucky doll up at a yard sale. This weird old woman, that should have been a sign that tipped him off straight away. But anyway, he buys the Chucky doll off her. And from there, we get a pretty typical Chucky style plot where Jake takes him home, and we slowly get suspense of Chucky being revealed as stirring mayhem and mischief up and slowly impacting on Jake's life. I think a lot of the episode is getting to know Jake's character. So his father, who's essentially an alcoholic, they've lost Jake's mother in the past, and the father is abusive basically to Jake. And we get to know a bit about Jake at school. There's sort of the drama with him, and particularly this girl Lexi, who's like the school. She's kind of like the Cordelia of the show, if you like. She's the queen bee, the bully, and that's going to become, at least in these early episodes, a running theme episode really for Jake to finally realize what's going on with Chucky, but where he's going to be sort of stirring things up with Jake, but at the same time he's maybe sees himself as like helping Jake out against sort of bullies like this. But a lot of the episode, apart from the sort of typical Chucky stuff, is getting to know Jake and the other characters. So what did you think?
Okay, so I when it comes to Chucky, I kind of go a bit up and down with the movie. So I like the first movie. I haven't seen all of the sequels. I've seen the first movie, Bride of Chucky, which is so much fun. Seed of Chucky, which is truly terrible. And Curse of Chucky, which I actually really did like. Curse of Chucky. I thought that one was very cool. But I haven't seen Cult of Chucky yet. I kind of went into this with no expectations. I knew that they were doing a Chucky TV show, and that's pretty much it. I don't think I'd even watched the trailer when I finally sat down to watch this episode. And I have to say, did not impress. Like, really at all. For starters, it feels dated, which is really weird because it's set in the modern time. But, like, the lead kid is gay, and there is a lot of homophobia surrounding him, like a lot, like more than you'd expect in a movie set like in this time. I felt like I was like, are we in the 80s? Have we gone back to the 80s? Is this because like his dad is an arse about it? His dad's twin brother is an arse about it. His cousin's an arse about it. The Cordelia chick is a dickhead about it. It's like, okay, so the kid is gay. Like, this is not a big thing, especially not today. The kid's got some weird Sid from Toy Story vibes going with him, where he's got like these really weird, creepy, like doll mannequins that are made up of like other dolls, which is supposed to be art, but is actually just really creepy. The dad is an arsehole. Oh, and also played by Devon Sawyer, which made me feel really old because
Devon Sawyer, the Final Destination.
Yes, Final Destination.
I didn't even
when I was a kid,
him.
was one of my biggest childhood crushes, and now he's old enough to play a dad. I feel very, very old. So he was kind of like a complete arse, and he has a twin brother, which was weird, but double Devon Sawyer, sure, why not? And I found myself tuning out a lot. Like, I had the show on and I had to keep rewinding because I kept kind of going off and doing other stuff because it just wasn't holding my interest. I didn't find any of the characters likable, not even the main character. Chucky himself is, I mean, we're in episode 1, so we're going to have to wait a bit for it to like really amp up, but I mean, he's still Chucky, you know, Brad Dourif, still giving it his all. The scene where he gets up on stage and kind of insults all of the classmates was like classic Chucky. And the kill that we got at the end was interesting, to say the least. So I just feel like there wasn't really a lot to go on in this first episode. It felt kind of empty, you know. It's like you said, a lot of it's just establishing Jake's character. We don't really get much else. I did find the teacher, the lab teacher, who's kind of nice to Jake. She is played by an actress who was in the Carmilla web series, which is one of my favorite web series. And so I was like, well, there's a reason to keep watching because I quite liked her in that. But aside from that, I was not really impressed. What about you?
I agree. I think possibly I was not impressed for different reasons than you, but actually you do highlight some good points. I think the homophobia stuff, to have so many characters who are not cool with it, is just overkill anyway. I think it does stretch things because obviously that's not pretend that homophobia still doesn't exist. But
no, of course not.
Obviously,
but for
we
it to
live
be
in more
so many characters.
Yeah. So I agree that was overkill. It's funny. I didn't know that was the Final Destination guy because, to be honest, I mean, he's not the world's best actor, but I mean, in Final Destination, he's pretty solid in that movie and stuff. And because I thought his performance was pretty rubbish, but it might have been direction or what he was given. Because to me, he was just a one-note, stereotypical, like douchey type, just TV dad. It felt like very network TV, very soapy, and I wasn't too impressed with the first episode, and I think the way I would sum it up is then this felt like a network teen show which just happened to have Chucky in the background.
That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah,
100%.
I thought it felt very generic. I thought the casting of the teen characters, I thought most of the actors were pretty bad. Probably the teacher, I think, provided some comic relief, and that actress was quite good. But I think outside of little parts like that, I thought the actor playing Jake was really bland and had no real personality.
Right?
My hope is then we move on from him quickly. I hope he's not going to feature too long because at this point it's one episode, okay, but I can't really see a lot of potential for the character. I don't like the actor playing him.
No.
I think it might be because of the performance and the script where he comes off quite whiny and annoying in places. But just most of the things about it felt very network TV, very generic. Like the choice of music at one point when they're in the school, in the hallway, that sort of felt like the typical, let's just find, the sort of go-to dance track. We won't find something really cool and edgy. We'll just go for whatever's laying about, really. And the way that whole scene was directed was very sort of in your face. The highlights were the Chucky stuff. I generally enjoyed the Chucky stuff. It's this weird mismatch at this point, because I think in places the stuff when it's focusing on Chucky, I think those scenes are actually quite well directed. I like, the direction of the opening scene, the opening tease, where they actually fool you into thinking it's Chucky because it's shot from like low down, so it's like a character running towards this woman who's like brushing her hair.
It's kind of Halloween-esque. It reminded me of the Halloween opening. True. Yeah.
So there's a tease there, and we might as well just get into that. It's actually quite a nice reveal at the end, and it's revealed that it's Charles Lee Ray as a boy, Chucky, but it's a young Charles Lee Ray. So that's it was obviously his mother. So there are some nice bits of direction. I quite like the direction in the scene where Lexi sees Chucky, and there's a little bit of suspense where she thinks that he's moving, but she's not quite sure. I like the way that scene was shot, and obviously she ends up being interrupted by the teacher. Like, the teacher comes back in. So there's little moments. The Chucky stuff is the standout. Obviously, we haven't gone full-blown Chucky yet.
No.
And I have a theory why. I think it's maybe then they were conscious of trying to introduce a casual audience.
Yeah.
Because in some ways, this does go back to what they were doing in the original movie, where for a long time they treat it as like this horror premise where the characters don't know that Chucky is alive, sort of thing. So that's what I feel. That maybe they were conscious of someone coming across this on TV who hadn't seen any of the movies, and I think for us it drags the drama a little bit because we're kind of in on this stuff, and we just want to get to the Chucky stuff, and we just want to get to the character stuff in some ways.
Yeah.
But I think the main problem is the new characters that they introduce just aren't very good. Let's say the Cordelia of this episode, she's really OTT. She's really annoying. There's no real personality to her. And it makes you wonder, because obviously, the writers, directors of this have a good track record with the Chucky movies.
Yeah.
And you just wonder if sometimes it's a byproduct of, whereas if they did this on a streaming service, then maybe they would be involved in everything and they would have a lot more creative freedom. And obviously that might still play out when we see further episodes. But you do wonder if some of this is generic network stuff where they've just been dumped with, like this sort of pool of really useless actors where they've just gone for, they can't really afford like high-end sort of cast. So
yeah,
they've just gone with like the most
whoever they can get. Yeah,
the talent show scene, actually, because
yeah, that was a weird scene.
That was a weird scene. It maybe just goes to, this is kind of going for a more pulpy style feel, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. It didn't make sense. I didn't really believe this is something Chucky would be doing. And
yeah, it seems a bit odd for him to reveal himself that early.
In the crowd. First of all, I wondered, what the hell is this anyway? Why is this being hosted by Lexi? What is this exactly?
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, then it just plays out in this really weird way where they seem obviously the idea is that they're convinced he's doing like an act, but they just seem to be lapping it up. Like, their reactions, I thought, sort of felt really false and weird, and it's just a weird scene. I mentioned it before, that weird kill near the end. It's when the father's killed, isn't it?
Yeah. So he
What did you think?
dies. Yeah, I thought. Look, I thought it was a. Chucky walks a fine line between like horrifying and disgusting, and so I just found it really weird that the dad's death was basically Chucky drinking all of his alcohol and then vomiting it out on electrical wires that were surrounding the dad's feet, and the dad gets electrocuted from that. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, okay, I can see Chucky killing someone like this. Like, this is something that
Probably
especially
fits the character.
it fits the character, especially like Bride of Chucky era Chucky, you know, like the later era Chucky. But by the same token, it was so weird. And considering it was like the first proper kill we got in the series, it was like, this is how you decided to kill the dad off, by Chucky vomiting liquor at him and electrocuting him. It just seemed really, I don't know, it just seemed like a bizarre death to me.
Yeah, it's the way he does it, because the actual kill I sort of enjoyed on a visual level because of all the him being electrocuted. But it's just, maybe it was a bit too goofy, the fact that he was actually vomiting, and that's how he did it. But whatever, it was quite enjoyable.
It was quite in tune with, like I said, with Chucky as a character, but it was just so random. And I think, again, because I'd kind of been zoning in and out, I kind of just looked up to see Chucky suddenly vomiting all this like liquor out, and was like, whoa, okay, where did that come from? I wanted to make a note when you said that this feels very generic, and like a generic high school thing that just happens to have Chucky in it. Like, I so agree with that statement. One of the things for me was, I was like, this doesn't feel like a Chucky, it doesn't feel like a Chucky franchise or anything. Like, it doesn't feel like Chucky. This doesn't feel like classic vintage Chucky. This feels, like you said, it feels like it's just Riverdale with Chucky along for the ride, or Gossip Girl or something like that. It was very generic and I do wonder if you have a point about that maybe being studio interference or executive interference. Like, maybe, like you said, if it had been on a streaming channel, they might have had more creative control. It just, it was very boring. I was not really engaged at all. I only really became engaged when Chucky came to life and when he was speaking. Because the characters are just no good.
Yeah, and I do wonder if it's one of these where it's a fine balance between, obviously, being on TV, they know they have to have a thread for the season. And obviously at the end of this episode, what they actually set up is then Chucky is kind of going to stand up for Jake. He's going to stand up to him against the bullies. And sort of the hook at the end is then he says, well, what about that Lexi? What are we going to do about her? And I think they're doing this sort of double thing with Chucky, where on the one hand, he probably in his own way sees himself as, he's with Jake now. So anyone who messes with Jake is going to, going to get payback. But at the same time, there's this twisted side of him where he's also doing it to make Jake's life hell as well, make his life more complicated. But it does feel a bit of that, well, this is the TV show, so we have to have a thread throughout the episodes. And I'm not sure how especially since I'm not into Jake as a character, I'm not sure what I feel about. As I said, my hope is that Jake will be a short-term character and that we'll quickly move on, because it's another way they could go, where they could almost do it anthology style, where you only spend a certain amount of time going to see more of them. So it'll be interesting to see if they pick up. They're obviously going to pick up threads from the film. But yeah, what do you think about this idea of Chucky sort of avenging, let's say, people who believe?
It's an interesting theory. I mean, that kind of what he does in the first movie. He becomes quite attached to Andy. Now, obviously, he's becoming attached to Andy because he wants to transfer himself to Andy. He seems to be over that little glitch now. But it does, in the first movie, he goes after people that he perceives as being a threat to Andy. So I think it does fit with it. I do find it interesting that at the end, the kid whose name I can't remember. You said it like half a dozen times, and I still can't remember. It was that memorable. Jake, that's the one.
Yeah.
He says to Chucky, he's like, "Oh my God, you really are Ray Lee Charles," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" So they're actually just going to go straight out that he knows that he's a possessed doll. Like, I found that very interesting. So I think that angle is interesting. I do like the anthology idea that you just floated. I think that would work better to see Chucky go from like person to person, see him get passed from like character to character. Maybe we just need to wait and see until some other characters appear, because like you said, yeah, this episode was very much establishing things in a very weird and random way, but it was still, you know, it's a pilot. You can't always, I mean, you have some great pilots, but you can't always judge a show by its pilot. So maybe we just need to wait until like, you know, until Tiffany turns up, until we see Andy again, maybe until, you know, we get just a little bit more.
Yeah, you've got sort of like Andy's like stepsister. I can't remember her name, but she's obviously, I think, signed on to return. So you've got a whole bunch of characters who
we might just have to wait and see if it picks up once we get more characters, if it becomes a little bit less generic. But I found it not just generic but also weird. Like, I found this one really weird. Like, I kept being like, this is such a weird little pilot. Like, it didn't really seem to know what it was doing. It kind of jumped around a lot. It didn't quite know what it wanted to establish with certain characters, and the whole feeling, like, it's like you said, like a talent show. Why is like a 13-year-old kid hosting a talent show? Why is Chucky suddenly getting up and revealing himself to everyone? Why is the dad now, like, there's that scene where like the dad just starts wrecking all of his statues, and I was like, what just happened? Why is the dad going, like, it was just all like these weird random like plot beats that didn't have any lead up to them, and so it just felt really disjointed. But maybe we shouldn't judge. You know, Brad Dourif is always good, and he seems to be committed to the role again. And like I said, maybe once Tiffany shows up and Andy shows up, we'll get a little bit more to go on. But at this point in time, I found the pilot kind of very boring and mediocre. Like, nothing so offensive that I'd say it was terrible, but it definitely wasn't great.
Expected, then the main focus would be them just continuing on from the movies, and so I expected other characters in this episode from the movies, and maybe they just feel then for TV you can't sustain that, then you would just be continuing from the movie. Then you do need fresh characters. I don't know, but maybe if they went the anthology route, that might be the way to go. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm certainly gonna. We're obviously gonna stick with.
We'll keep watching and just hoping that maybe gets better.
Yeah, I mean, it's my hope then once they introduce the other characters, that's when things will really pick up. And I'm sort of hoping then it's more than just cameos, then they do have quite a big part to play.
Yeah, that'll be nice. We'll see what happens, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it improves as it goes along, and hopefully it does. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our thoughts on the first episode of Chucky the TV show, Death by Misadventure. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be back next week with our thoughts on episode 2. So as always, like and subscribe, share us out on social media, look out for other reviews we're doing. Speaking of horror TV, we're currently working our way through The Haunting of Hill House, so you can find our reviews of that on the channel. And yeah, you can also ding the bell on YouTube to get notification. And once again, check out Rachel's channel, Rachel McDonald, on YouTube. And we'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.